This is Asmi Shah. I help you harness the power of energy to improve your life. And today I'm going to tell you about my story, my healing journey, how I got here, and where I am today, both professionally and personally. So, a little bit about me. I was born and raised in New Jersey. Both of my parents were immigrants from India, and I grew up in a Gujarati Jain household. And so, growing up, both my parents were, I would say, like semi-religious. So we did pray a lot. I used to say the Naukar mantra, which is the holiest Jain prayer every day. I still recite it today. We also used to go to the temple. I kind of grew up with a lot of reverence for Indian culture and a lot of the ancient wisdom. Now, obviously, living in America, we weren't practicing everything. We also had a very different diet than how, my parents and grandparents did when they were in India. But I grew up with a lot of like love for Indian traditions. I used to like love oiling my hair, which now a lot of people do, but for a while, no one thought it was cool. I used to love it. My parents did struggle a lot financially, and we went through a lot of hard times. And I grew up pretty poor. And there was a phase where I kind of felt like I was an atheist. I was like, the world has too much pain. I don't understand it. And my parents were really cool. They were really understanding. They didn't force me to go to temple if I didn't want to. They didn't make me pray. They really gave me my space to explore, figure out what I want to believe. They always believe that, religious beliefs, things like that, they're so personal that no one can tell you what to do. No one can make you do anything. And so I also grew up very independent. Even though I was an only child, I was a girl, I was really raised to be independent, make my own decisions, live with those consequences. Fast forward a little bit, I was pretty good at school. I was kind of a nerd and I was really good at math and science. And so I ended up getting a scholarship to go to Cornell and I studied electrical and computer engineering, which was amazing. I come from a family of engineers and I was really excited to study. At that time, my parents had been going through financial struggle, and my only goal in life was to get into a good school, get a good job, and get a steady paycheck. Like that was it. That was my worldview. I didn't have much more that I was expecting out of life, to be honest. Going to Cornell was an amazing experience. It really opened me up to so many different things. That is where my love of cinema, I think, really started. Like I always grew up loved watching Bollywood movies, but it was really at Cornell where I got exposure to international cinema, indie films, and getting to see and learn so many different things and be around so many different kinds of smart people. It was amazing. After college, I ended up working in consulting and I moved to New York City. I remember working a lot. I think there was one week where I got close to 100 hours, but definitely a lot of weeks where I was working 60 to 80 hours, surviving on 4 cups of coffee, and taking NyQuil on Fridays to go to sleep. Not a really cool existence for when you're like 21 or 22. And I remember at that time thinking that, yogis are really healthy. Like, I want to be like a yogi. And so I asked my parents when they had gone to the Jain Center to pick up some yoga DVDs for me. And that's actually how I first started learning about asana and pranayama, was doing these DVD practices in my apartment on the Upper West Side on the weekend by myself. I ended up feeling healthier, a little bit more calmer. I ended up then getting a job in finance, which was really stressful. And I was working even more than I was in consulting. So my yoga practice paused temporarily. I was working a lot. A year into it, I kind of started feeling like, okay, this isn't for me. I don't think I belong here, but I don't know what I want to do next. I don't know if I want to go to business school or not. Obviously, like business school is really expensive. I want to be intentional if I'm deciding to go. I wasn't really sure. I was trying to figure things out. And, my parents had been like small business owners. They didn't really know about the corporate world. They didn't have a lot of just, guidance for me of like, oh, do this, or this will be good for your career, or this is how you should think about this. I was with these thoughts for a while, kind of like trying to figure out what my next step is, not really feeling like I belonged in finance, not feeling like it was the place for me, but not knowing exactly what I want to do next. In the summer of 2009, my parents unexpectedly passed away within a few weeks of each other. And overnight, my life changed. I was an only child. I was really close to both my parents. I used to call them every day. I, probably saw them like once a month because they lived in Jersey and I was in New York City. And literally, my world turned upside down. It was hard to breathe. It was a lot. Both my grandmas were alive at the time. And so I remember thinking that how tragic for them to survive their adult children. And I honestly think like some of what kept me going at that time was trying to be there for my grandmas to suddenly, become the ambassador of my parents. And so, up until that point, I was born and raised here. Both my grandmas were in India. I didn't spend a ton of time with them. I used to talk to them on the phone, maybe like once a month. I made a handful of trips to India, but I really didn't know them. in that way. I didn't know them really well, to be honest. And so after my parents passed away, part of what I saw as my role was to be there for them. I started going once a year to India to spend time with both my grandmas. I started calling them 3 times a week. I really got to know them actually. And I built beautiful relationships with both of them. And at that time, I was really trying to be there for them, but I didn't know how to be there for me. And I went through a lot of grief and depression. And I was trying to figure out, how do I make my way out of this? How do I keep going? What is the point of my life? What is the purpose? How do I move forward? I'm only in my mid 20s at that point. I'm like 26, 27. And I ended up going to a bookstore back when there used to be a lot more bookstores than they are now. I found this book on healing mantras and I saw it and I just picked it up. I kind of knew it was for me. I, again, had always believed in these Indian traditions. There were some things that I know and that I grew up with as like lived experience. And then there was a lot of stuff that I honestly just didn't know growing up as like a kid in New Jersey. And so I picked up this book on mantras. I read the whole thing. And then I started doing these different like 40-day mantra practices. And like all the time, I would just be chanting a mantra in the back of my head, trying to focus my energy somewhere, trying to just get through the next moment, trying to breathe. I did that for about a year. The mantras did help me a lot. They really did help, I think, slowly shift my energy, but I was still having a lot of trouble. And I had not slept well for about a year. I had a permanent low-grade headache. I was feeling miserable. Outwardly, some of my life had returned. I was like seeing friends, I was hanging out, I was doing things, but internally, I was still really sad. I was really depressed. And that was when my then roommate really encouraged me to do therapy. She had been encouraging me to do it for a while, but I had been hesitant. Growing up in a South Asian household, people don't really do therapy. I think, people are now, but I'm talking about 15, 17 years ago. People didn't really do therapy back then, and definitely not South Asian people, and people didn't talk about it. But I ended up going to therapy for about like a year and a half, and it really helped me during that time. It helped me process a lot of grief, move through a lot of emotions, and also clarify what I wanted to do next. So, during this time, I was still in my finance job. It was the Great Recession and then the recovery. Honestly, didn't know if I was going to get laid off or not. I didn't really have a safety net. Whatever safety net I had was whatever savings I'd had up until then. My parents were not rich. They did not leave me with anything. And so I was trying to figure out what my next move is. And while I was trying to figure out my next move, I was just trying to keep my job. I needed the paycheck, wanted to be stable, wanted to, live in my current apartment, be financially independent, and not have to ask anyone for any help. And then eventually, through therapy, I kind of clarified that I actually decided I wanted to get my MBA rather than a PhD, which was like a big thing because my dad had always wanted me to get a PhD and I thought I was going to, but then when I thought about it some more, I actually didn't want it. That wasn't the life I wanted for myself. And so I ended up getting to a place finally where I could study for my GMATs, take them, apply to business school. I got into UCLA Anderson. So I moved cross country, did business school with the idea of actually staying in finance, but trying to either get into, venture capital or private equity. But the universe did its thing. One thing led to another, and I ended up actually pivoting into tech startups. So getting a little closer to my engineering roots, but still being on the business side. I'd gotten my MBA. I hadn't gotten a master's in engineering or anything like that. I ended up moving back to New York after business school, worked at one startup, was there for about 2 years. We had new investors come on board. All our leadership changed, and I kind of no longer felt welcome there. Went to another startup, had a pretty challenging experience there, to be honest, and was feeling pretty disappointed with life. I thought, here I am. I'm in my early 30s. I'm in New York. I have done all the right things up until now. I've gone to a good school. I had done at least a lot of healing from my parents passing away. I don't think you ever heal completely, but I'd moved on. I'd gone to business school. I had been dating. I'd been doing all these things. And I was back to feeling really frustrated and angry, to be honest. I wasn't happy with my work situation. I didn't want to live a life that I wasn't excited about. I didn't want to just live for, vacations and weekends. Didn't want to be upset and crying in the bathroom at the office, which had happened. I've been trying to look for a new job and nothing was clicking. Applying to a lot of different places, couldn't even get an interview, let alone a job offer. And after 6 months of this, I was kind of feeling like I need something positive in my life. I need to have something that's going to bring me some joy. A coworker just offhand recommended that I do yoga teacher training. She had recently done it and she found it life-changing. And I thought, why not? Nothing else better to do on the weekends. And so I signed up for my yoga teacher training at the end of 2017. And I did my yoga teacher training on the weekends in 2018, and it was a truly life-changing experience. So the first thing I learned is I went to yoga teacher training thinking, we'll learn how to do handstand and headstand. No, that's not actually the case. While you do spend a lot of time learning about the asanas or the physical postures and how to cue people and how to have a physical practice, what I learned is that in yoga teacher training, you actually learn about yoga philosophy, which was concepts that I'd grown up with as a child, but I didn't really know that there was this whole, canon or tradition called yoga philosophy. And so as we were learning things like the yamas, the niyamas, the different paths of yoga, I started finding a lot of overlap between yoga philosophy and Jainism. It suddenly felt like everything was making sense and I was almost like coming back home. And then slowly we started learning about the chakras and energy. And I just remember like the moment I heard about chakras, I was like, oh, this is it. This is like the thing I have been missing that is giving vocabulary to the feelings I've been having, explaining the things that like the missing dot. It was a really exciting and really interesting time. There's also a lot to be said about doing a yoga teacher training in New York City with primarily white people. As a South Asian woman, I will maybe talk about that experience another day. If you're interested, let me know in the comments. So yoga teacher training was transformational, like learning about yoga philosophy, learning about chakras. I felt like I was coming home. I felt like this is the thing I had been looking for. And I remember one day somebody came in, we had this like show and tell project, and you could do anything you want. You could do an experience, you could recap a book, you could do whatever you wanted to. And one person brought in a singing bowl and she played it for us for just like a minute. The moment she did, I was mesmerized. I was like, I don't know what that is, but I want to learn more. I went home that night. I started researching singing bowls, and I saw everything from some really cheap ones to some really expensive ones. I couldn't make heads or tails of any of it. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to put this on the back burner because along with finishing yoga teacher training, I also ended up getting my job at Google, which I actually got through yoga teacher training and is a very cool story in and of itself. But then I thought, okay, I had this cool transformational experience, but now I just got a job at Google. That's a pretty big deal. I need to go and focus all my energy at Google. And so I started in Google in May of 2018. And I remember in August, Google has this program called Search Inside Yourself. And it's like a 2-day, workshop for professionals to learn how to be more mindful, to learn some different techniques, to learn about stress management. And one of the things you do is you actually talk about your values and you journal about what your values are. And I remember journaling about how community service was really important to me. As a child, I was 15 and I begged the local Red Cross chapter to let me go and volunteer. They usually didn't let you volunteer unless you were 16, but I convinced them to do it when I was 15. And then, the last few years through all the things that had been happening in my life, I hadn't been really doing any community service. And so I felt this call to actually share yoga with people. So when I did my yoga teacher training, I didn't ever think I would teach. That was not the goal of it. The goal was just to do something for myself. But suddenly I felt like, well, yoga's transformed my life. I want to share that with people. It's actually pretty hard to find a place to volunteer to teach yoga in New York City, but I ended up finding a studio in Brooklyn. It was called Emerge Soul. It's no longer there post-COVID, but it was a Black-owned nonprofit yoga studio, and that's where I got my start teaching yoga. And I'm so grateful for that. I mean, my first class, I was like really, really terrible. I had a script that I'd memorized. I couldn't go off script. I refused to move off my mat for fear of forgetting my script. But Tamika Ford, who was the owner of Emerge Soul, stuck with me. She really believed in me and she gave me a chance. And it was really, really amazing to get the opportunity to learn how to teach and share that with people. And so I'd still been mesmerized by the singing bowl, but I thought, okay, like that's just on the back burner. I really have to focus on my job at Google. And then I've also started teaching yoga classes. But one of the things that happened is over the summer, a few months after I joined Google, I ended up buying a small singing bowl just for myself, for my own personal practice. I started using it daily in the morning and I liked it. I started creating my own little morning routine, doing some pranayama, some eye exercises, a little bit of meditation. And then one of my friends unexpectedly had passed away right before I joined my job at Google. And he was really young. He was in his, I think, early 40s at the time. I ended up going to meet his wife for Labor Day weekend. I took the small singing bowl with me, and I'm typically not a pushy person, but I just insisted that I play it for her. I don't know why, but I kept being like, please let me play it. Please let me play it. I remember she was there, her mom and her best friend. The moment I played the singing bowl, the entire energy in the house shifted. And they were so curious. They're like, oh, play it again. Can we play it? Like, what's going on? This is so cool. This is so interesting. And I remember just feeling like, I don't know what this is, but this is really powerful and I need to learn more. And after my yoga teacher training experience in New York, I really wanted to go close to the source. And so I ended up doing a bunch of research. And within a week, I booked a training in Nepal for that December because I also needed to accrue some vacation days having just started my job. And so in December of 2018, I went to Nepal to do my first sound healing training, which was an advanced Himalayan singing bowl training. And there we learned how to use Himalayan singing bowls to do one-on-one energy healings. Honestly, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what it meant to be an energy healer. I thought I would just go learn how to play the bowls and then I could maybe do some sound baths for me and my friends. I didn't really have a plan. And I got there and that training was, again, it was such a transformational experience. So, we're learning how to play the bowls. I'm practicing every day. And I think it must have been like day 5 or day 6. We did like an advanced technique where you place the singing bowls on the body and you do the healing that way. And they had told us, they said, hey, this is really intense. Afterwards, you might cry, you might have an upset stomach. Like as your energy shifts, things might happen. Did the class, didn't really feel much. Felt a little underwhelmed and disappointed, to be honest. Like I wanted like something to happen and nothing happened. Then I went to go get dinner at a local restaurant. I'd ordered my soup and suddenly I've ordered the soup. I'm waiting for it to come and I feel just this huge amount of just sadness wash over me. And I'm like about to bawl, but I'm just holding the tears in, waiting for the soup. And it wasn't specific. It wasn't related to anything in particular. It wasn't about my parents. It wasn't about something else. I just felt this almost like crushing amount of sadness. And so I drank my soup as quickly as possible. I went home and I think like I cried like half the night and I was just like tossing and turning and I was like in and out of sleep. And I feel like, I had like a lot of energy shift. There were some other experiences that I had that night that were kind of personal, but it was a truly like out of body experience. And so I did end up feeling something after that advanced healing and then finished my training, came back to New York, was starting to do, sound baths and sound healings for friends. Again, was feeling like, wow, this is like so great. I want to share this with people. I ended up moving to Brooklyn in 2019, and then I started doing sound baths in Brooklyn. And so I was doing my Google day job and I was doing sound baths and yoga classes at a couple of different yoga studios on the nights and weekends. And I thought, this is a good life. I have this amazing job that I'm so grateful for that so many people would want, getting to work at Google in New York City. I have things that I'm passionate about that I'm getting to share with people. Life is good, and then I was still single. I was like trying to date. I was trying to go out, but that was basically like more or less it. And I didn't have any other vision for yoga or for sound healing in terms of trying to offer it in a way to try to make more money or try to make a business out of it at that time. And then, COVID happened. And right before COVID, I ended up actually taking my pranic healing classes. I realize this is getting a little long now, so I'm sorry if I'm going into too much detail, but I really do have so much to say because this has been a journey that's 15 plus years in the making. It's not something that happened overnight. So anyways, let's fast forward to fall of 2019. I had been going through a little bit of a heartbreak and nothing I was doing was making me feel better. My mantras weren't working. My sound healing wasn't working. My asana practice wasn't working. And I remember I was on the phone. I was talking to one of my friends from business school who at that point had become a pranic healer. She said, can I do like a quick healing on you? And we were on the phone and she did something and I instantly felt better. It was amazing. After weeks of feeling miserable, I instantly felt better. And I thought, okay, that's cool. File it, in the back of my head. But again, I already have a lot going on. I have a full-time job at Google. I'm teaching yoga classes. I'm teaching sound baths. I don't need to learn anything else. I don't have time to learn anything else. Something kept calling me and I ended up taking my pranic healing classes in Jan of 2020, kind of on a lark, not knowing what pranic healing is, not knowing exactly why I was taking them, but I felt called to and I did. And, by March we had lockdown. And then during lockdown, I ended up practicing a lot of pranic healing. I ended up doing a lot of twin hearts meditation, which is one of the key meditations in the school. I spent a lot of COVID just working on myself, to be honest. And then I emerged from COVID trying to figure out who is it that I want to be? What do I want to do in terms of sharing all the tools that have really changed and transformed my life? And so at the end of 2021, I started creating like a list of questions for myself of how I wanted to live my life with more intention. I'm not a New Year's resolution person, but I thought, how do I take all of these things that I've learned and create frameworks and questions that I can answer so I can incorporate those things as teaching, but still kind of like, make it easy to fill out. Because if I just stare at a blank page, I don't think I'm gonna really get anywhere interesting or exciting. And so that happened. In the middle of all this, I met my husband, we got married. He was already into Reiki and meditation. And then in 2023, he decided to do all of his pranic healing classes. I'd already become an Arhatic yogi, which is like the spiritual yoga school of pranic healing. He did that as well. And so now we practice pranic healing and Arhatic yoga at home. So we have this deep energy healing and spiritual practice. He still does Reiki. I still do my sound healing. I have my personal yoga practice. And at the end of 2023, I really felt this calling of bringing these products out into the world of the questions that I had created. And so then we ended up launching Soul Thara in 2024, which is our product business that I've co-founded with my husband. And so we are selling guided journals and energy healing infused aura sprays and bath salts. I continue to do one-off workshops, events, some private healings, and I still have my full-time job at Google, which I am dedicated to. So that is a little bit about my healing journey, how I got here. It has been years and years and years. In terms of what my week looks like right now, obviously I work at Google, so that is taking a lot of my waking hours Monday through Friday. Meth, who is my husband, he and we try to meditate in the mornings. It is a pretty intense spiritual practice. It's about an hour and a half to 2 hours. We don't always do the whole thing, but that's what we aspire to do. I also like to work out and move my body, so I'm trying to move my body at least 30 minutes every day, if not more. I also then do sound healing and pranic healing on myself, on friends and family. I've got my YouTube channel and we're trying to grow Soul Thara. So it is a lot for sure. There is no silver bullet here in terms of making all these things happen. It has been intentional. It does include sacrifice. Like, we don't get to socialize as much as we want to. We still have recreation and entertainment time, but it is definitely less. It is not all of our free time outside of work because we are trying to grow a business. We are also trying to grow ourselves spiritually and energetically. So that's a little bit about what my life looks like right now. I will say that, when I talk about these practices changing my life, it's kind of hard to put it into a concise, like 2 or 3 sentences because it is a lot and it has happened slowly and gradually over so much time. But the things I can tell you, I am a lot more calm and peaceful now. I was a type A person who always felt stress. Stress was my default. I think I didn't know how to turn off. And maybe that's why I had so many sleep issues. And now my sleep issues sometimes come and go, but generally I'm able to sleep, which I had bad sleep through high school, through college. I'm able to relax. So downregulate my nervous system, activate my parasympathetic nervous system, relax. I'm a lot more patient. I used to be someone who thought I didn't have patience. I used to joke that patience isn't a virtue that I possess. I've actually learned how to become patient with both others and myself through these practices, through learning how to pause, learning how to be intentional, learning how to connect with others through spirituality, through energy healing. I've learned how to give and receive love a lot more deeply. I think that's something that was a really big unlock for me. And I don't think I would have been able to find a life partner and really get married had I not been able to do that. And it is 2 ways. It is being able to actually receive love and feel worthy of it, and to be able to give love unconditionally, not with expectations, not with attachment, but just say, I love you and I'm going to do certain things for you. It also helps me with my resilience. I think having something greater than yourself that you believe in can put even the hardest times in perspective and help you get through them. It doesn't mean you don't have challenges. It doesn't mean you have hard times, but you have a worldview, you have a support system that is beyond yourself. And I think it is, for me, I will say in particular, unlocked a lot of creativity. I used to be someone who was just good at math and science. I didn't think I was a creative person. I never thought I would have started a business, to be honest, especially because my parents struggled so much as small business entrepreneurs. This was not something was on my bingo card for life. It was not something I was planning to do. But the truth is that I believe so passionately about the things that I'm sharing with the world that I think people need them and I want to share them, that I'm willing to put myself out there. I'm willing to be uncomfortable. I'm willing to learn how to be an entrepreneur, which I don't really know how to do if I'm being honest. Like, yes, I did go to business school, but starting a business, learning to sell, learning to market is completely different than working at a big company and knowing how to navigate OKRs and KPIs and, follow up on action items, but I'm doing it because I really care about what these things have done in my life and I want to share them with you. So that's a little bit about my story. I hope that was interesting. Let me know what questions you have, and I'll see you next time.